This is a Seconds Out Radio Rahim exclusive. I just returned from Saudi Arabia on the red eye tonight and had an opportunity to speak directly with Don Charles, the trainer of Daniel Dubois. Anybody in boxing knows that this last week, the called greatest card of all time began with Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker in the co-main event, IBF heavyweight title on the line. Very late in the week, Thursday, the fight was called off because Dubois could not continue on the card. There was a lot of mystery around what his illness was. There was no reporting on exactly what had happened or why or when it was determined that Dubois could not continue on the card. However, at the very 11th hour, Martin Bakole stepped in and took Dubois' place. In my conversation with Don Charles today, he broke down the TikTok, if you will, of everything that happened leading up to Daniel Dubois and the team deciding that he could not fight on Saturday, February 22nd, the Last Crescendo versus Joseph Parker. What I'm about to do is break down that TikTok as it was told to me in person by Don Charles. The team arrived in Saudi Arabia the Friday before the fight, meaning 8 days before the fight. Their first training session on Saturday, the Saturday before the fight, Daniel Dubois was in top form, 100% ready to fight. So much so that Don said he wished the fight was that Saturday instead of the next Saturday. That's how good Daniel Dubois' trainer believed he looked the Saturday before the fight. The preceding week, fight week begins. By Tuesday, Don said that he noticed that the performance that Daniel was giving on Saturday was not the performance he was giving on Tuesday. This happens, sometimes fighters peak, they have a great day in the gym, everybody's like, man, that's perfect. And then the next day, maybe it's not all there. That is part of boxing. Nothing to lose your mind about. But it was something that he noticed. That's on Tuesday. Then Wednesday, Dubois comes in to train, and the performance is lesser. This is not the direction you want to be going in a fight week building up to the Saturday matchup. However, even this is not unheard of in boxing. Sometimes guys ebb and flow. Maybe you dial it down during the week just so you can ramp up and peak again the following Saturday. However, it is not typical of Dubois to have ebbs and flows like this. And the fact that Wednesday was not as good as Tuesday and that Saturday was so good, it definitely was starting to cause conversation in camp. But again, we proceed. Not anything to go crazy about. Come Thursday, they're preparing to go to the gym. This is going to be the last workout of the week. This is going to be the last workout before the Saturday night matchup. And Daniel just can't even make it out of the hotel to the gym. He had to then confess to Don that he was feeling ill. He wasn't well. And of course, immediately Don started to question him, only to find out that he actually hadn't been feeling well for 2 days, but he hadn't said anything. He was keeping it to himself, just trying to work through it, didn't want to cause any, chaos or concern in the group. And that's the kind of guy that Daniel Dubois is. He's just going to bite down, get through it. We're going to fight Saturday, no question. But come Thursday, he was too under the weather to hide it, and he had to tell his trainer. At that point, of course, Don immediately calls for a doctor. His Excellency, Turki Al-Sheikh, sends his own doctor to Dubois to give a medical analysis and to deduce what could be wrong, what's going on. So that's His Excellency's personal doctor in Saudi going to see Dubois and to give him an examination. Upon examining Dubois, this is the doctor that Turkey sent, he found inflammation inside the ear. He even asked Don, well, when was the last time Dubois sparred? And he was like, it's been 12, 13 days since sparring. And he's like, his ears are so inflamed, it looks like he's sparred recently. That's not good. That is internal ear inflammation. That is showing that there is some sign of illness. His glands also wildly inflamed, red, inflamed, showing that there's likely a viral infection here. So that doctor then prescribed antibiotics to fight the infection and left it with the team what to do, right? At that point, VADA, who randomly drug tests, and it was randomly drug testing for this fight, they come in to do their testing. That is unrelated. VADA is not going to assess whether or not a fighter is well or unwell, sick, or prepared to fight. They're just there to do the drug testing. However, as occasion would have it, VADA steps in and they do their random drug testing. While that is underway, so too does the British Boxing Board of Control arrive, then to do another medical examination on Dubois to deduce the level of his illness and to find out if there is, anything that is so severe that they themselves have to call the fight off. After further examination, now this is the second doctor. First doctor is provided by His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh. The next doctor provided by the British Board of Boxing Control. Second doctor also finds that Dubois has swollen glands, that he has a viral infection, and while they do not go so far themselves as to call the fight off, again, the British board did not call the fight off themselves. They did advise Don Charles that based on their findings, he should not, they do not suggest that he boxes, but they're not stopping the fight. And the reason I mentioned VADA is for two reasons. There's conspiracy theories out there that, maybe a fighter is ducking the post-fight test, or he knows he's dirty, he doesn't want to get caught and all this. And I only say that because I've heard that. So and I, again, only found out today, having spoken to Don, that just randomly, coincidentally, VADA did come and test him on that day. And so they have those findings of that day. So if that is your conspiracy theory, unless on that day they find something that they will publish later, that's out the window. Because not only if you were trying to pull a stunt like that, would you definitely get caught on the Thursday if you're going to get caught on Saturday night, but the fact that the test did come on the day would, you might as well fight at that point if you are dirty. So we have VADA testing for not only this fight, but the very day in question. And only VADA will be able to provide the results of that test, of course. So with that said, it also gave the British board doctor an opportunity to collect urine. So the medical analysis was not only just a physical examination, but it included blood and urine for the doctor to analyze, who then did they put a dipstick in it and it turns colors or whatever. They can tell what's happening in your urine instantly. And the British board said, we're not calling the fight off, but he is sick. And based on the fact that he's now taking antibiotics and we can find that he is unwell, it would be advisable. You can consider whether or not you want to fight based on these facts. And at that point, as Don relays the story to me, he considers what he's heard. Obviously, Daniel has been present for all of this. He looks at Daniel, says, "What do you want to do, son?" Daniel says, and this is a quote, "I'll be all right," indicating that he wants to continue on the card. Daniel wants to box. Now it's down to Don Charles to consider his fighter wants to box. He knows his fighter is definitely ill. There's inflammation in the ears and the throat. He's also now been prescribed antibiotics. He's been advised by the British board doctor not to fight. However, they're not going to call the fight off. And at that point, Daniel and Don are the only ones who have heard what the doctor has to say in person. And he now brings in, Don does, Daniel's father and relays the information to Daniel's father, who, Daniel's dad is so involved and so protective of his son and emotional. I think he probably couldn't even stand all the testing and everything. They had to, he was in the building, but just not stand there in the room. He was waiting for Don and Daniel to tell him what the results were. So when that came across, it was down to Don Charles and Dubois' father, Stan, to determine what to do. Ultimately, Don Charles told Stan, after having been asked what Don's opinion was, that he doesn't believe that his fighter should box on Saturday. Given all of the circumstances that they're aware of factually, as far as his illness, not knowing how antibiotics might affect him, and knowing for sure, whatever the case is, he's not 100%, that his advice is to not box. Ultimately, Stan Dubois, Daniel's father, agreed, and he was the determining factor, the deciding vote to say, my son is not boxing on Saturday. At that point, they immediately notified Frank Warren, who was aware, of course, that the doctors were visiting, that Dubois was ill. But at this point, the team and Don Charles personally lets Frank Warren know that the decision has been made that Daniel's not boxing Saturday. As Don Charles conveys the story to me, Frank Warren was immediately supportive of the team's decision. He said, if you don't think Dubois should fight, then I don't think he should fight. And we move on. No resistance from Frank Warren on that tip. Then, immediately, everybody on the team surrounds Daniel to support him in his well-being, get back to health. They've accepted that the fight's not happening, and they become a team to support their fighter. Dubois then leaves Saudi Arabia Friday morning, flying back home to London, and is recovered as much as he could before he got on the flight, got out of Saudi, got back to London, and that is the end of the TikTok. Like, that is as detailed a story as you are going to get. I got it directly from Don Charles. I believe him 100%. And it makes sense. You do with that what you will, but those are the facts as they were conveyed to me. That is the chain of events, and the decision was made by the team based on those facts and the opinion of two doctors, and ultimately the decision made by Daniel Dubois, Don Charles, and Stan Dubois, Daniel's father.
Very comprehensive walkthrough for the fans on that, Rahim. Good stuff, brother. Really step by step. So Saturday he's peaking, and then he's just going downhill throughout the week. They finally get him checked out. So I know a lot of not a lot, but a decent part of the fans, they'll still have their eyebrows raised. And when it comes to VADA, whether it's here in the United States, if it's a PBC show, top ranked show, or if it's overseas in the Commonwealth, or if it's in Saudi, there's just some fans who just are never going to trust VADA. They have a close relationship with Victor Conti, and people will just always raise their eyebrows at that. And so, some of those theories will persist, and there will still be fans, I think, that go, well, where did the Usyk quote late in the week last week about he'll fight Dubois for undisputed, where did that play into this timeline too? But despite all that, I mean, that's a very comprehensive, follow through on that. And so, good reporting, Rahim, obviously.
I mean, to your point,
Yeah.
sorry, and one of the reasons that we have these conversations all the time, Sean, is because I expect you to challenge it, and I expect you to bring to the conversation the conspiracy theories, the different ways this can be looked at or challenged. Right. I'm not here as a defender of Team Dubois, but I am here as a firsthand account of what I was told by Dubois' trainer, which in my estimation has an unblemished record of honesty with me, and I take him at his word, so I conveyed it to you the way it was told to me. So in the sense that what I know, based on what I was told, I am willing to put forward and then we can combat whatever conspiracy theories and how that works or doesn't work with the facts as they've been conveyed to me. The idea that Usyk said he'd fight Dubois undisputed, and then maybe Dubois swallowed it so that he could just go straight up to undisputed. Let me tell you, I've also been in camp with Dubois. I know that this fighter wanted that fight. He did not at any stage show any inclination, not only that he doesn't want that fight, but that he doesn't want to fight. He wants to fight. He doesn't want to do press. He doesn't want to do any kind of appearances. He doesn't even want to be out being a star or showing off his championship he wants to fight. That's all he wants to do every day. He trains every day. That's his focus. His
fight
team,
in mind, as Tyson Fury would say.
Yeah. Right, exactly. His team has worked 3-4 months preparing him. You know, when this happens, they don't get paid. There's no concession being paid to anybody on the team. It is a ton of work, a ton of preparation, a huge disappointment. And Dubois was ready for this fight and brimming to compete. So unless there is more than just conjecture, I don't think that theory holds up, just because that's just not the character of the fighter. And he just beaten Miller. He had just beaten Hrgovic, and he had just knocked out Anthony Joshua. With all due respect to Joseph Parker, who was a hell of a competitor and a great challenge, I don't think that Joseph Parker is scaring Dubois come February 22nd. He's not ducking Dubois because he's afraid he's going to lose. That's not the run he's on. That's not the mindset he's in. That's not the level of his confidence. I believe the young man was sick and he was still willing to compete. And his team stepped in and decided to protect their fighter and to make the wise decision to not continue on the card. This is what I believe happened.
Yeah, and from afar, you know, obviously I've never been able to cover Daniel Dubois up close, but from afar, definitely respect and like his temperament and what he's all about, and respect this revival he's had in his career when he got too much stick about, you know, the Joe Joyce fight and all of that. So it's not so much me casting aspersions on Dubois or any fighter. It's me acknowledging the realities of how a significant portion of boxing fans will look at things, and kind of giving them their viewpoint, their say that he's a fighter's fighter. He's
yeah.
Daniel Dubois, you know, it's funny. The narrative after the Joyce fight is that he's a quitter. He's been a dog ever since that fight, you know, and so.
Yeah, and they say as soon as he pulls out of this fight, oh, he's a quitter, he's ducking, he's, you know, this, they can't wait to say that, but it also just doesn't make sense based on the run he's on and the quality of fighters that he has beaten, stopped, the quality of fighters that he has knocked out, the fact that he chose Joseph Parker. It's a voluntary defense, it's not a mandatory. So it's not like they had to fight Joseph Parker. They chose to fight Joseph Parker. And Dubois is a full-fledged competitor, brimming with confidence, always wanting to fight. Why now, in this fourth fight of his incredible run, would he decide to duck Parker when he never had to fight him in the first place? It doesn't make sense.
Well, you definitely had a lot of information to provide here, man. Thank you for that comprehensive walkthrough of Daniel Dubois' week. I think, I think the fans will be a lot more filled in and informed on what went down with him. Shout out to Don Charles for granting you the time to give us some transparency after the fight week. So, yeah, if anything else you got to let it rip, man. But, yeah, good breaking news, good update.
Well, the last thing I should let rip is that a huge congratulations to Joseph Parker, who took a last-minute challenge that everybody thought would potentially be a show-stopping knockout, as the monster, who's supposed to be the most avoided fighter in the heavyweight division, steps in last minute. When Joseph took that fight, he did not know whether Dubois was in camp, training, what condition he was in. He just said, I want the toughest challenge, and the toughest challenge showed up. Credit to Martin Bacoli for accepting that challenge himself and daring to be great on 2 days' notice. Clearly didn't go his way, but they saved the card. The two of them made it an exciting replacement that everybody was talking about. everybody was anticipating. And it was an incredible fight as long as it was, because Joseph Parker said that he got hurt in the first round and then landed the knockout shot in the second. So this was still, even with the condition that Martin Bakole showed up in, not trained, overweight, was still able to hurt Parker. And if that one shot doesn't land top of the head, you know, that sweet soft spot on your skull, who knows? Or if he had been able to continue, Martin Bakole, who knows how the fight would have gone. It was still entertaining. It saved the card. It made for an exciting night. So credit to both of those fighters for being game, and credit to Team Dubois for not thinking about the money first, not putting their fighter out there when he wasn't 100%. He is the champion, and he deserves that kind of consideration. Credit to His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh for immediately sending his own doctor to make sure that this was a credible illness and to offer medical treatment if Daniel Dubois indeed was ill, which he clearly was. The British board giving the fight team the option on whether or not to fight or not, and ultimately the team making the decision that was in the best interest of their fighter. I think everybody did the right thing. The fans won, and if it is undisputed next, I'm here for it. Can't wait.